A new Star Wars MMO in the works? Watch to the end to see everything we have so far.
One of my favorite parts of gaming as a hobby is that there's always something going on. Like constantly, there are new irons in the fire at development studios across the world.
Seriously.
And it's especially exciting for me when I hear that there's a new game in development from a company who's made a game that I really liked in the past. And that is exactly the case with today's topic.
Okay.
ZeniMax Online Studios, the team behind The Elder Scrolls Online, has quietly spent the past 5 years developing a new MMO based on a new IP, and we could potentially be getting an official reveal sometime soon.
A new MMO by the makers of Elder Scrolls Online? A little bit of a stealth release. Oh, okay, I see what's going on here. They're coming in under the radar. Dude, that's awesome. That is awesome. I hope it's good.
Whether or not a reveal happens, I'm just excited to know that they've been working on something new for a long while. So let's take a look at the timeline and what we know about the game so far. Rumors of this project...
Wait a second. Okay, I was confused for a second there because I know I've made a video on an open world Star Wars game, but I think this is actually separate from that. So there is like an open world, maybe RPG type action game for Star Wars and this Star Wars MMO. What is going on, Star Wars? You're coming out with some exciting content. Thank you.
Started circulating back in October 2018 with a ZeniMax careers posting seeking a programmer with MMO development experience to work on an exciting new IP for PC and consoles. Not much else was said of the position beyond that it would be located in Hunt Valley, Maryland.
That makes sense. They always have to be kind of secretive with these position listings because they don't want everybody knowing what game they're working on. They kind of want it to be on their schedule or on their release like cycle or whatever to let people know, on their press cycle to let people know when things like this are coming out or, you know, in development or at what stage. They want to be in control of all that, so that makes sense.
Which is the headquarters location for ZeniMax, although they've got many smaller offices across the country and as of recently have really started to go to, I think, somewhere around 50% remote work. But regardless, this was the first information, the first inkling that ZeniMax had something in the works. Then in 2019, we got more of an official confirmation from ZeniMax game director Matt Fyrour in an interview with Official Xbox Magazine, where he said, not a lot of people have picked up on this, but if you look at our job site, you'll see that we are accepting applications for people to work on a new engine for a new AAA game.
So, okay, now I'm not so sure. I know I made a video in the past about a AAA, like, open world Star Wars game, but I don't think we had enough info on that to know. No, wait. That one was being developed by Ubisoft. Okay, so these are separate games. Yes, I remember. So this is completely separate. We're getting 2 upcoming Star Wars games. One is an open world RPG action game, I'm pretty sure, and then this one, ZeniMax Studios. Star Wars MMO, here we go!
And that mention of a new engine is kind of a huge deal, as it implies, and we later get further confirmation, that their new MMO will run on a new in-house engine, not...
Well, thank goodness. Elder Scrolls Online is running on the Skyrim engine, essentially, and that is just outdated. I mean, don't get me wrong. Skyrim still looks pretty darn good, especially if you use some mods. But, yeah, it's about time they updated. Good to hear.
Not Unreal Engine, nor the engine that was used for the Elder Scrolls Online, which frankly is a bit of a relief for me. As much as I do love and appreciate ESO, I want whatever their next project is to look and play differently and or better, and presumably a new engine will at least make that much more likely. Then in 2020, things really began ramping up for news about this game, and we started to get a lot more details. Now that I'm full, let's move forward with news from 2021. And like I said, there were quite a few substantial updates. Now in April, we learned that Colin Campbell had joined ZeniMax Online and would be taking the role of lead level designer.
Let me see here. Colin Campbell, who is this? Oh, okay. Formerly Respawn, BioWare, Motive, and Big Huge Games. Respawn and BioWare. So this guy's good. This guy is good. Okay.
For the new MMO. Campbell previously worked on several well-known games. He was the lead world designer for Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning, the lead level designer for Mass Effect Andromeda, and he also apparently worked on the narrative teams for both Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Jedi Fallen Order. Now, I know Andromeda has a bad reputation, but I will say Fallen Order was hands down one of my all-time favorite Star Wars games, and while Battlefront 2 did have a bad launch, it too looks to have turned the ship around into what a lot of people consider a good game. And then there's Kingdoms of Amalur, which I just love from the get-go. Really fun action combat RPG.
I'm gonna have to look up this one because I've never heard of Kingdoms of Amalur. That's first time hearing about that game. I'll have to check it out.
Interesting world. I loved Kingdoms of Amalur and anyone associated with the project, and I am still hoping they make that Amalur MMO at some point, although that's a whole nother story and probably not going to happen. Anyways, along with the announcement of their new hire, ZeniMax Online's creative director Ben Jones said, "I'm beyond thrilled to welcome Colin Campbell to our new AAA team at ZeniMax. He brings a wealth of experience into the lead level designer position that I know will make a major impact on the original IP." Now, it is worth noting that since joining the team, he has just recently been promoted to the content director for the game, but he spent at least a few years working as the lead level designer, and because he worked on level design for Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning and for Mass Effect Andromeda, for any issues you might have with those games, I don't know, I thought the level designs were good, so maybe that is a good omen. We'll have to see. Now, also around that same time in early 2020, we saw numerous ZeniMax job postings stating that the studio was in search of developers to work on the new game who had extensive experience developing and playing MMORPGs, with
our big first hint, okay.
The available positions involving work on various systems, which included achievements, itemization, crafting, and housing, or in other words, a lot of the standard expected MMO features. Fast forward to October 2020, we saw a slew of new positions crop up, giving us some more details on what to expect. There were a ton of designer positions for levels, cinematics, encounters, UI, and UX, and many of those requested that applicants have experience working with MMOs, as well as...
Okay, so a lot of the things that you would expect in an MMO, and we're getting all these updates, and it's all coalescing, it's all coming together, getting the big picture. They're working on an MMO, aren't they?
Open world games and both third and first person perspectives, implying that this MMO would be open world, not terribly a surprise. ESO is mostly open world, like there are loading screens, but there are large open zones if nothing else. And the first and third person perspective is also something that we get in ESO. That game has both a full dedicated first person mode where you can see animations cast and your character's hands holding weapons and casting spells, as well as of course third person, which I think people predominantly play in.
That's something that I really appreciate about games like that, is that they give you options. You may not like one of the options, but that's the point. Not everybody's going to like one or the other, so you get those choices. I do appreciate that about games like that.
But also in October, we got further confirmation that the game will be running on an entirely new engine. So Xbox News said, Xbox first-party studio, ZeniMax Online, developer of ESO, is working on a brand new AAA IP built on a brand new game engine, and the title has been in development since at least 2018. Now, to that statement, Alex Tardif, who is the lead graphics engineer at ZOS, replied, "Not much to say about this yet, but it's been so much fun creating a brand new engine with how rare this kind of thing is nowadays. I feel fortunate to be at this studio while we invest heavily in our own technology."
You know what? That's really, really encouraging. Because, I mean, in this day and age with Unity and Unreal Engine just being so far beyond now, where things look basically photorealistic, right? I really hope that their engine can compete. I really hope it's on that level or better. That would be insane. So this is pretty exciting. I'm happy to hear it.
And when done right, it certainly can be a major benefit. It can be a major help to a game. And one of the things that some game engines struggle with when MMOs are developed on them is they're not designed for MMOs. And that can be a problem, especially as games continue to expand with time. Then the following year, ZeniMax Online finally came out with what I would consider the first real formal public-facing acknowledgement of the game. Because prior to that, everything had just been like various developers either
just some hearsay scattered about in the ether of the internet, here, there, everywhere. Not really sure 100%, but now we've got confirmation.
they're tweeting or talking online or doing interviews, but this was from like an official channel. On August 20th, 2021, the official ZeniMax Online Twitter account posted that their next AAA game was in development and they're looking for passionate people to join the team. That tweet then also linked to their hiring page, and that page had a header that said, "No, it's not a rumor. Our next AAA game is in development." And below that, they stated that they've learned a lot bringing the world of ESO to life, and it's time for them to take those lessons and build a new AAA IP.
Okay, and we're hoping that it's grand, it's intense, immaculate, beautiful, on the scale of like World of Warcraft, but maybe with like way better graphics like Black Desert Online, or even better. Hey, I would accept that too. Really good combat. Come on, give us everything. Give us everything, and we'll be happy.
That their vision for their next game is grand in every sense of the word, and that they're developing a new engine, of course, as we've reiterated numerous times. Might be a bit reaching here, but I do take that to mean probably a very large-scale MMO, maybe large-scale in terms of the playable space. It's, jumping out on grasping at straws here a little bit. Okay, let's move on to 2022, which actually did bring us quite a few new details on the state of the game, thanks to creative director Ben Jones. He appeared on the Product Builders podcast, revealing a few things. First, confirming the length that the game had been in development. He said, "We're primarily known for ESO, which is an extension of the very well-established Elder Scrolls universe and also published here at Bethesda, but I am driving an independent team working on new intellectual property, and I've been doing that for about 4.5 years. He also talked about the size of the development team, which seems fairly decent. He said that he's responsible for a design team of about 50 people.
Wait. So he said it had been in development for about 4.5 years in August 2022. Is that what he said? So it's 2023 now. Only like 3 or 4 months until August. And let's see here. So that's about 5 years then. Wait, 5.5 years then. And the normal like development cycle for an MMO is usually about, I would say, 5 to 7 years. Are we about to see a new MMO releasing like relatively soon, like maybe next year? This is insane. This is actually huge.
But they've got a development team of nearly 200 people at this point that are spread all over the globe. 200 people is a decent chunk designing an MMO. It also leads me to believe that as of that interview, that they are actually in full-scale production, no longer in pre-production. We just don't know how far along in that process is, when that tipped over. It's, of course, hard to say for sure. It's all completely guesswork. He stated that the game is a considerable investment and a very large scope project. Big scale MMO, large place.
Hey, we like to hear it. We like to hear it, man. We want these big scale locations and worlds and universes. Yes. Lots to explore, lots to see. Hopefully lots of good experiences to have. Yeah.
Based, lots of stuff going, who knows? And he touched on the fact and some of the implications of them making a new IP, saying that we're creating a new IP. So a lot of that started with a background for a world, a vision for a high-level world that we were going to create, and to a degree, a story that we wanted to tell. So this just further drives home the idea that it is a fresh, brand new IP, which is going to be important to keep in mind when we get to another point of discussion later in this video. And this finally brings us to the current year, 2023. Anything new? Well, not much in terms of like new leaks or developer interviews, but we do have those old reliable job postings to comb through for details. So first there's the lead gameplay producer, who was said to need experience and familiarity producing and working with progression, combat, encounter, AI, and...
Okay, all right. This is good. Just at a very, very like first impression level, that's a good thing that they're focusing so hard on those particular, let's say, mechanics or systems for this position, because combat is key in an MMO. If the combat is really good, I think you could have a player base just from that. Like, oh, I love that game because the combat's great. Like, this is really good to hear. Man, if they can really, really, really nail the combat, even if the story isn't super fantastic, even if the graphics or whatever, maybe the new engine they're talking about is a little bit lacking, the combat can carry it. So this is really good to hear.
Moment teams, and to have solid familiarity with production in a live service MMO game. None of these things sound especially surprising. Yes, an MMO is going to have a progression system. Of course, it's going to have combat, encounters, and AI. Moving on to the lead content producer, who was said to need experience with level design, narrative, cinematics, encounters, world building, and mission and quest teams. They were also asked to have familiarity with production in live service MMOs. The lead technical designer was asked for experience in developing open world games and familiarity with third-person action or role-playing games. Same thing with the designer director was asked for familiarity with third-person.
I'm glad to hear that it's third-person. There's some funky ones that like to throw in first-person, like Elder Scrolls Online. Maybe they'll include that anyway, just to have the options. But I'm glad to hear that third-person sounds to be the focus. I definitely enjoy that more for an MMO.
And action
it's
RPGs,
more typical.
as well as experience with multiplayer open world live service MMOs. There was a position for a senior vehicle specialist, so it looks like the game will have vehicles of some sort in it. They would be designing and developing these. And there was also, we have seen a position that was fulfilled for a principal PvP designer, so it looks like this game will have PvP. Again, not terribly surprising. Also,
yeah, these are all the big mechanics and systems that you would expect from an MMO. So this is good. It's good to hear that it's, at least they're not lacking, you know, they're not leaving out something big.
So, of course, not surprising, monetization, it's going to be there. For the position of senior product manager, they would be partnering with design and UX to define and steer systems, economies, and rewards that compose the game's monetization and retention loops. They were asked for experience with launching and building live ops environments, live service games across all platforms. One of the main faults, maybe you could say, of ESO is the particular way it is monetized, or more so broken down and hyper monetized with all these different layers of chapters that they release in the various DLCs. Non-mandatory subscription, but sort of mandatory if you plan on playing on a regular basis. And then the fact that it has, you know, you have to purchase all this stuff as it comes out every year.
Yeah, monetization systems can get kind of ugly, especially like what he's describing, the ESO one. That does not sound pretty. So ideally, you would only monetize through like cosmetics and maybe like expansions, right? You purchase the expansions of the MMO as they come out or whatever, like World of Warcraft or whatever. I can understand that because it's like, hey, this is a huge content pack. We need to, you know, recoup some of our time and development costs. But all of this nitty gritty, like layers deep, like, you know, you have to have 1,000 IQ to understand the monetization. Not such a big fan.
They release a new update. Some of it's free, some of it has to be purchased. Let's not talk about the endless crafting bag, which if you're going to really play it all, you probably want to buy the monthly sub for. But regardless, yes, of course, the game is going to have monetization. Now, there is one interesting twist to this entire story that I've yet to mention. I wanted to save it for last because it's kind of, well, there's a possibility of this being a Star Wars game. One running theory is that ZeniMax is working on a Mandalorian-themed MMO. Now, this
What? No way. No way. Oh, I really hope so. I really hope so. I am such a big fan of Star Wars. If you've watched any of my other videos, you will know this. I love Star Wars. I love it. Now, I won't say that I'm like such a diehard Star Wars fan that I'll love it no matter what. If it's bad, I'll say it's bad, right? But I definitely enjoyed the Mandalorian series. I really, really did. Oh, man, if they make a Mandalorian MMO, I'm so down. I will play the crap out of that. Oh, man. That's awesome.
Information is only sourced from leakers. Multiple leaks that have happened over the past couple of years, with leakers then confirming fellow leakers, saying that, yes, those prior leaks were correct, so are mine, just trust us, bro. Nothing confirmed through, like, official sources, which a lot of what we've talked about so far is official. We've seen official developers, we've seen official job posting, we've seen ZeniMax's own Twitter. Most of what we've covered so far is all official stuff. The Mandalorian stuff it's on shaky ground, but it's absolutely possible. Although a Mandalorian MMO does seem to be in direct conflict with all of the job postings that clearly state this is a new IP.
Yeah. So when they say it's a new IP, that does throw up a red flag, right? Because Star Wars is very much existing. That is not new. maybe maybe you could argue that it's a new IP in the sense that it's like it's a new Star Wars MMO. I don't know. That feels like a stretch though. So I don't know. I would love it if it was a Star Wars MMO. I would love it if it was a Star Wars like Mandalorian MMO, of course. But yeah, I don't know. This doesn't really line up. So maybe don't get too excited just yet.
Unless what those meant were either I guess Mandalorian is a new IP within the Star Wars IP. Is that accurate? Do you consider Mandalorian an IP within the Star Wars IP? Is that how that works? Or that it's a new IP for ZeniMax because the only IP they'd worked with prior to that was the
That would make sense. If they're saying it's a new IP for ZeniMax to be working on, then yeah, I could understand that reasoning, and this could be real, maybe.
Scrolls, who's to say? And then this leads to further speculation that ZeniMax may have 2 new games in active development. This Mandalorian thing that's rumored from leakers, and a new IP MMO, which is what...
I mean, this is getting layers deep now. So there's a Star Wars MMO and another MMO? I especially with this economy, I don't know if there's enough manpower to be doing all that.
We've mostly been talking about so far, which actually... turns out isn't speculation. The studio having multiple games in development, it's no secret. They state as much themselves on official channels. The header on their Twitter page right now says that they have multiple unannounced projects. The Mandalorian side of this is like less accurate, less concrete than everything else on the timeline that we've discussed, as its only sources are leaks and rumors, but it is possible that
It could be possible then. I mean, it's a stretch. I feel like it's a stretch. 2 MMOs at once, that just sounds insane, but maybe?
ZeniMax could in fact be working on 2 MMOs, one for the new IP and one for The Mandalorian.
Right.
One thing that people do point to sort of as supporting evidence of the Mandalorian MMO thing is that hiring of Colin Campbell, whom, as we mentioned, has credits for working on 2 Star Wars games, Jedi Fallen Order and Battlefront 2. But if
I mean, I can see that correlation, and it does make sense, but I think it's still a little bit of a stretch, right? I say withhold all 100% hype until we get concrete news, of course. But, man, it's nice to dream. It would be so cool. It really would be.
Of course, that doesn't confirm anything, but I guess it probably wouldn't hurt if you were making a new Star Wars game to have someone in a leading position who previously also worked on a Star Wars game, worked in that universe, worked with that IP, worked with the rights holders. It definitely wouldn't hurt, but just because they have someone who's worked on Star Wars in the past doesn't confirm that they're making a Mandalorian MMO.
Exactly.
I also want to mention, too, in 2021, there was this random GeForce Now leak which revealed that ZeniMax Online had a game in development that was code-named Project Kestrel. So there's a good chance that either this new IP MMO or this Mandalorian MMO thing is codenamed Project Kestrel. And I think what's more interesting about that GeForce Now leak is that it referenced the launch window for Project Kestrel as being at some point in 2024, so next
year. Hey, that's what I was saying. And that kind of lines up with the development time that we were talking about. So that could be it. Project Kestrel, Star Wars Mandalorian MMO, maybe? I hope so.
Year. At this point in time, April 2023, the game has been in development for around 5 years. Now, many MMOs have a ballpark development time of between 5 and 7 years as like a rough
That's what
average.
I was saying.
ZeniMax's current game, The Elder Scrolls Online, had about 7 years of development before it finally released. So using that as a template, I do think that there's a decent chance we at least get some sort of a reveal either this year or next. Now, there's a few possible events coming this year that this could happen. We, of course, have Summer Game Fest, which is happening on June the 8th. There's the Xbox Game Showcase scheduled for June 11th. There is, of course, E3. Too soon? And then, of course, we've got things like the Game Awards happening later in this year and various other possible points that they could be announcing this. But either way...
You know what? So he's wrapping up here, I can tell. This is super good news either way. ZeniMax and, Bethesda, they've got such a great track record. In general, I'll say in general, there were some mishaps and issues with a fair few, but in general, such a good track record. And the fact that they're developing a new MMO when they definitely have MMO experience and they've learned from their experience with that MMO, this is super exciting for me. And a new engine. Oh man, I hope it looks good. I hope it looks good and feels good. I'm excited. I'm excited to at least find out more. And I hope you are too. Well, what'd you guys think? What are the odds that we get a Star Wars Mandalorian MMO? Let me know in the comments and leave a like, a subscribe, and I'll see you next time.